will convene the Mendocino Council of Governments together. Is there anything we didn't note for the beginning meeting other than, I guess, roll call?
All right, Director Jim Brown.
I am here.
Director Larry Stransky.
Yes.
Director Richie Wasserman. Director Tess Alvin Smith. Director John Haschak.
Here.
Director Rex Jackman. Vice Chair Michael Carter.
Here. Did you get mine here?
Yes, and Chair Dan Jurdy.
Here. Okay, thank you. We're going to convene as the Regional Transportation Planning Agency, recess as the Regional Transportation Planning Agency, and reconvene as the Policy Advisory Committee. Next thing on our agenda is public expression. Do we have any members of the public that would like to comment on things that are not on today's agenda?
I would. Hi, this is Jessica Stellato.
Okay.
Hi. Let's see. For those of you who don't know me, I live up in Round Valley, and been in communication with MCOG quite a bit. And I understand Nafili mentioned there is a traffic safety study that's being undertaken for the county. And I asked if we could have Round Valley be focused on that as well. And I haven't heard anything back since then. And since you were having a meeting, I thought I'd come to the meeting to share the concerns here as well. I'm hoping that Round Valley can get some focus, because what's happening here is truly insane driving. People are going like 60 and 25-mile-per-hour zones. We've had 4 or 5 deaths just due to people crashing so hard that they die. And this most recent one was right on Howard Street. It's a 25-mile-per-hour zone. And 2 or 3 of the 3 occupants have died. I've gotten conflicting messages on the 3rd, either the person's still in the hospital or they have passed away. But this is a 25-mile-per-hour zone, and they crashed so hard that they died. And we've had several people crashing, getting very injured and dying because they're just driving incredibly recklessly here. I live right downtown, and I hear squealing tires a couple times a day at least. You know, on our community groups, there's people talking all the time about how people are driving so incredibly fast. And as we all know, CHP can only be up here a little bit. And we really we need some assessment to see how extreme the problems are. If I were, living in Ukiah, hearing these stories, I would have a hard time believing that it's so bad, but living here, it's really, really, really bad. And so I'd really like some assessment done of our community. I'd like to have Round Valley included in that traffic safety study, because it is not safe here. It's scary. People are almost getting hit on their bicycles. And then problem solve and figure out some infrastructure fixes, because obviously law enforcement can't really help solve the problem. So that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Jessica. And I know under public comment, we can't really have any kind of significant discussion, but I just want to let board members know that the study that Jessica is referring to is the local road safety plan that is being funded through the Highway Safety Improvement Program. And MCOG has actually there's an RFP out right now for consultant services to conduct that plan. So we can make sure that part of the county gets included.
Awesome. And I guess also we're going to be discussing traffic safety at our Round Valley area MAC meeting on Wednesday at 6 p.m. So if anybody wanted to attend that, I've invited the sheriff, CHP, county DOT, There's a woman who's from Caltrans Active Transportation Program, and MCOG would obviously also be welcome. And I haven't heard back from CHP or DOT yet, but the sheriff for sure will be there. And I'd also hope to have tribal police there so we can just have a conversation about like who is actually capable of doing what and who isn't capable of doing what, so we can really find those gaps and try to figure out how to solve that. So anyone's welcome to join our meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank
Hey,
you.
Jessica, Rex Jackman from Caltrans. I'm not sure exactly to what extent I can comment, but I will pass the comment on to our traffic safety folks, just to let them know that the concern has been raised.
Awesome. Thank you, Rex. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other public comment on items not on the agenda? Okay, not seeing any. We'll go on to our regular calendar. First item is recognition of retiring board member Richie Wasserman.
Sorry, I was on mute. So it looks like unless Richie is one of the phone numbers here that I do not recognize. There are two phone numbers, and I know that one of them is Jason. But it looks like
Nafili, I'm the 66761 or 7767. Sorry, my
Okay,
dyslexia kicked in, I guess.
thank you. So
Was
it
that
look-
one you were unsure of?
Yes, thank you. So it looks like
You're welcome.
Richie has not joined us, so maybe we should hold off on that particular item.
Okay.
Chair Dan Jurdy, please excuse me. I have to go set up for the election. I can only stay for a minute or two, and then I'm leaving at 1:15.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Tess, for joining us. I think we still have a quorum without you. Okay. All right. Thanks. Hope it's a safe election.
Yeah.
Safe and swift.
Yes, good luck.
Okay, so then we're on to Covelo 162 corridor multipurpose trail project.
Yes, so as I think all the MCOG board members know, we MCOG sponsored this project as a result of a planning study that was done back in 2014 through funding from the Active Transportation Program. We have been working on project development for the project with help from consultants since 2016. The firm GHD was hired for the environmental and design work on that. And then last year we contracted with Bender Rosenthal Inc., or BRI, for right-of-way services. Within just the last couple of months, we learned of some additional contracting needs for the right-of-way activities that were not included in the existing contract. That is for surveying and legal descriptions. Rao and Associates, and in conjunction with Munsell Engineering, has been working on the project as a sub-consultant to GHD originally, and they had done some of the preliminary work under that subcontract. However, GHD's work has essentially come to an end on the project, and so it doesn't make sense for Rao to continue as a sub-consultant, but rather to have their own contract. This is, it's a little different than our normal procedures. Normally when we have a contract, we would go through a competitive procurement process. However, because of the circumstances involved in this, the fact that Rao is already heavily involved in the project, and the amount of the contract and for a number of other reasons, we have been told by Caltrans that this would meet the justification requirements for a sole source procurement, which would save MCOG the expense and time involved in a request for proposals or request for qualifications. However, the additional work is more than we were anticipating. And so we have been given a preliminary estimate of $90,000 for that additional work. Because this would use up the available funding, and I'm going to ask James to give some detail on the existing funding in just a minute, but because this would use up the available funding remaining for right-of-way, and we know there's still considerable work to do in that component, we did want to bring this to the board for direction before we move forward. We think it's really critical to move forward with the contract because we don't want to hold up the project. We're facing some pretty serious deadlines next year for allocating construction funds, and we need to complete the right-of-way component before that. So we recommend that the board approve us moving forward with this contract. However, we also know that there could be some additional questions and issues that need to be worked out with this project. And so the other part of this board or of this agenda item is the appointment of an ad hoc committee for this project. Moving forward, that would be the best way, we think, to work through details of the project and help make decisions and recommendations to the board when needed. So those are sort of the two parts of this agenda item, and I'm going to turn this over to James to give more detail on the funding breakdown.
Good afternoon. So I believe there's a spreadsheet that was provided to you in the back of that staff report. That's a simplified version of funding as it stands. As Nafili said, that additional work by George, Rao, and Mansell would spend the rest of our remaining right-of-way funds, which by themselves is $62,000. And then we would have to tap into our available RSTP contingency funds. We do still have almost 2.7 million available for construction, and that, as she said, has to be allocated by next October. We are completely out of environmental and design funds, so the little bit of remaining design work that needs to be finished will also come out of the RSTP funds. Right now, when all is said and done, there's still about 135,000 of the RSTP funds allocated by the board towards this project available. So, any questions?
So the other part of the funding picture is that we've been working with Caltrans to develop an application for complete streets funding. This is a somewhat new program. It's part of the SHOP, which is the State Highway Operations and, I'm gonna get this acronym wrong, State Highway Operations and Protection Program. And it funds most of the maintenance and safety projects on state highways. The SHOP now includes a complete streets component. And although normally that would, the funding cycle for that would coincide with the SHOP cycle, which is on about the same schedule as the STIP, there was some money that became available immediately due to cost savings or deprogramming on other projects. So we are working, or we did work with Caltrans to put in an application for that would add additional construction funding. We've asked for additional right-of-way funding for the project as well. And as indicated in my staff report, we were told that it was not eligible. However, we did meet with Caltrans again this morning, and they're going to continue trying to work with the people in charge of that particular program to see if an exception can be made and additional right-of-way funding can be provided in addition to the construction funding.
Okay. Do we have any? Go ahead, Jim.
Yes, thank you. So it looks like there's two actions being requested. Would it be appropriate to appoint the ad hoc and have the ad hoc come back with a recommendation on how to proceed to go forward? Or do you need the board approval for the contract to go forward?
So you could do that. So technically, board approval per our standard MCOG procedures, board approval isn't required for contract approval if it's consistent with already approved funding. So for instance, we have our planning work program that identifies projects and funding for those projects, and we hire consultants to do those projects. We don't need board approval for each contract because it's already been approved in the work program. In this case, it's already been approved because it was part of the right-of-way funding specific for the project, and then the RSTP contingency funding was for multiple components, including right-of-way. So we could go ahead and award the RAL contract without board approval. We could also today just appoint the ad hoc committee and have that ad hoc committee make a recommendation on the RAL contract, or the ad hoc committee could even give direction to staff on the RAL contract. I think that would be okay if it could be done in a timely manner. If we needed to wait and have a recommendation come back to the MCOG board in December before we could move forward with that contract, I am concerned about the delays in the right-of-way process.
Okay, so might I recommend that we go ahead and appoint an ad hoc? And I think that you have the authority to go ahead along, to move your contract forward. If the ad hoc feels strongly that this needs to come back before the full board, I'm speaking about the contract,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe upon their recommendation, bring it back even at a special meeting if we have to. But I would move that we go ahead and appoint an ad hoc, and then you do your contract negotiations the way you feel fit. And then if the ad hoc feels strongly about bringing it back, then we bring it back.
All right, I think that's a reasonable approach because it does allow us to potentially, if the ad hoc committee is supportive of it, it would allow us to go ahead and move forward with the contract prior to the next board meeting. And I want to point out that we do have Pete Field from BRI on the meeting today as well. He's the primary project manager for the right-of-way.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, if I could just add that, I would like to be on the ad hoc since Covelo is in my district, and I certainly am aware of this, and there's a sense of urgency, like you heard from Jessica earlier, that it all plays into the unsafe streets around downtown area and along the highway. So certainly it's a project that I am keenly aware of and would like to see move forward. And as far as the funding, if Jim wants to have the ad hoc look at it closely, then I'm fine with that. But I was ready to go ahead with the proposal just because I think it's a reasonable way of moving forward. And I don't see too many other options besides just stopping, slowing it down or stopping it. So I'm ready to move forward on both of them, or wait on the recommended contracts and do that at a little later.
Did we have a second on that motion?
Not yet.
No, I was just talking.
Maybe that can be a second.
Well, actually, I don't think I made it in the form of a motion, but I certainly can. I mean, and John, I'm not that interested in it coming back before the full board to go forward with the contract. I'm really not. I think that MCOG staff does a wonderful job on taking care of that kind of business. But if the ad hoc did feel like it's something that the board needed to hear, then maybe they could bring it back. So I guess my motion would be that we go ahead and allow MCOG to go forward with their contract, and that we appoint an ad hoc committee consisting of Supervisor Haschak. And I would actually hope that maybe Director Carter could also involve himself. I think he lives up in that area. So would that be okay with you, Mr. Carter?
Yes, I'd be willing to be on the ad hoc with Supervisor Haschak.
Okay, then that would be my my motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, any additional comment from the board on this item? Do we have any public comment on this item? Okay, can we have a roll call?
Director Brown,
Yes.
Director Stransky,
Yes.
Director Haschak,
Yes.
Director Jackman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Carter,
Yes.
Chair Jurdy.
Yes. I do have one question. Is staff continuing to look for other funds? I mean, just obviously as the funds have been expended a little bit above budget for the engineering and design phase, and I think you said you're tapping into just a little bit of the right of way or exceeding it, or I'm just concerned that, you know, when the final design comes in, we could find a situation where there's not enough money for the actual construction. So are you still looking for other options for the construction portion of the project?
Yes, so the complete streets funding that we're working with Caltrans on would provide a significant amount of funding for construction. I don't remember the exact amount off the top of my head, and I don't know if I included that number in my staff report. James might remember roughly how much additional construction funding we were asking for. But it would be enough to fully fund construction, plus have a decent amount for contingency based on the most recent, the 95% plans from GHD. I do feel fairly confident that we will receive the construction funding from that, the additional construction funding from Complete Streets. And then the right-of-way, the additional right-of-way money is the part that I'm less confident about, just because of the way the program works. So if that part is not successful, or if the construction part isn't successful, then yes, we will absolutely continue looking for additional funding sources. We talked about possibly going to the CTC staff and seeing if there's an opportunity to tap into other ATP project cost savings. Sometimes there are cost savings on projects, and I don't know if they have a policy for how those are used. But yes, we will continue to work on securing additional funding.
Okay, thanks. All right, that brings us to our next agenda item, which is number 7, which is the approval of local agency funding formula for regional early action planning grant funds.
Yes. So the regional early action planning grants, or REAP grants, were made possible through AB 101, which is the budget trailer bill from last year. This is the funding source that provides money directly to regional agencies. MCOG is one of only 4 rural COGs that is eligible for this money, and it's intended to fund planning that would support housing development or implementation of the regional housing needs allocation. So this is the reason why we came to you a few months ago with a joint powers agreement amendment, and which was approved and then ratified by all of the local agencies. So we're now in the process of working with local agencies on how to use that money. And although we had talked about the possibility of conducting a regional project potentially with the money, because we have the option of a regional project or sub-allocating funding, just given the demands on staff time, because this would be something in addition to all of our existing duties as the RTPA, and it is a one-time funding source, so not really appropriate to add any kind of staffing for this particular purpose. We think that it is best to sub-allocate the funding, and so we're working with the agencies on developing a sub-allocation, and so that is what is before you today, is a potential formula for sub-allocating the funds. And I will turn it over to James, who's been working with those agencies and has developed some potential formulas for using.
Good afternoon again. Attached to the staff report are 3 different scenarios based on different allocations of the RENA figures. The top one, we'll just call it scenario 1, is proportionate to the total RENA allocation. The second is proportionate to the low and very low allocations, and scenario 3 is proportionate to the very low and moderate allocations. One thing I didn't include in this is, so if you'll see under each scenario, there's a $15,000 base, which is something that we felt was appropriate, since if you go just by the strict percentage, Point Arena would get about $1,300 to work with. And so I do actually have 2 other variations of this, one with a $17,500 base and the other has a $20,000 base. And it adjusts the figures a little bit accordingly. And so looking at this, I've reached out to all of the cities and the county, and the cities are supportive of the recommendation that we've brought before you today, which is scenario 2, where the formula would be proportionate to the low and very low allocations. The county themselves would prefer scenario 1. They would receive the most funds under that one, so it makes sense to them. And that is where we are at the moment. Ultimately, when I was speaking with the county, their goal really is, at least in the initial conversation, is to make sure that whatever project they do, if it's near another city, is that it's complementary to them. And so while they would prefer the scenario 1, they're definitely open to compromise. So that's where we are now. In terms of the funding formula, hopefully we can come up with one today and then proceed with our project list from there.
Yeah, and I'll just add, so the reasoning behind the different formula suggestions and why the recommendation is to use the formula that relies on the low and very low allocations is because those are often the hardest to plan for. So for those of you that were on the MCOG board when we went through the regional housing needs allocation process, you'll remember that the state assigns us a total number of housing units needed in each income category. And then MCOG works with local agencies to determine how those will be distributed across each of the agencies. So the low and the very low are often higher density housing development, and so they require different zoning. And that's why the scenario, the funding scenario that relies on those seems most appropriate.
Okay, any questions from the board on in these different scenarios and the funding source? Jim, go ahead.
Oh, Director Brown, you're on mute. There you go.
There we go. Okay. I will make a motion to support staff's recommendation and go along with scenario 2.
I will second that motion.
Okay, any board comments? Any public comments? I'll just comment that I think this is a wonderful grant program. Hopefully we'll see the state come up with similar funds again. I kind of doubt they will, but I hope they do. And this is a much needed planning funds. I don't know what'll happen here. I would like to think that the county could work with the cities in using its funds, and maybe the city of Ukiah and could hire a consultant that would the county could also maybe hire, and same thing with Fort Bragg and Willits, to kind of do regional planning in and outside of those cities, because I just think maybe we could make the dollars go farther in that way. I think the challenge is going to be getting high density housing in the county where there's very rarely a water or wastewater system present where you can get that higher density housing. At least on the coast, there's almost no locations on the coast where you have water and wastewater where you could get high density outside of Fort Bragg city limits. So I think that's going to be the challenge for the county. Okay, we've got a motion. Can you have a roll call?
Director Brown,
Yes.
Director Stransky,
Yes.
Director Haschak,
Yes.
Director Jackman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Carter,
Yes.
Chair Jurdy.
Yes. Okay, that takes us to let's see, our consent calendar, which is approval of the October 5th minutes. Do we have a motion to approve?
So before we move on to consent, I'm not quite sure how the board would like to, so we skipped over item, which item number was it? Item number 5, which was recognition of Director Wasserman. He's still not, looks like he still has not been able to join us. So I will leave it up to the board if you want to continue that item to next month's meeting. He did indicate that he could participate next month if needed, or if you want to move forward with that item during this meeting in spite of his absence.
Well, we could continue it, and if he's not here, then you could present it to him outside of our meeting, I guess.
Yes, right. He's not here now, so even if we continue it to next month and he's not able to participate, it wouldn't make a whole lot of difference.
Okay. Well, why don't we continue it just in case he is at our next meeting?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve our minutes of October 5th?
So moved.
I will second.
Okay, do we have a roll call?
Director Brown,
Yes.
Stransky,
Yes.
Haschak,
Yes.
Jackman,
Yes.
Vice Chair Carter,
Yes.
Chair Jurdy.
Yes. Okay, now we're going to ratify the actions we just took. Do we have a motion to ratify the actions of the Policy Advisory Committee?
I will move to ratify the actions of the policy committee.
I think that was a second from Supervisor Haschak. Do we have roll call?
Director Brown,
Yes.
Stransky,
Yes.
Haschak,
Yes.
Vice Chair Carter,
Yes.
Chair Jurdy.
Yes. Okay, now on to reports. Caltrans 1, projects update information. Are there any updates, Rex?
It looks like my video is frozen, but hopefully you can hear me okay. There it goes. So I had a report that was generated from the web-based system that I've been tooting the horn about for some time. The report is, or there's two reports. One is current construction and one is future construction. Includes sort of minimal information about where projects are, and I had them also include project managers' names, which could be helpful for particular questions about particular projects. So that I believe was distributed to the board members, and there is, I also have, just a second, I also have some updates on a couple of projects that I was asked about. One is the Blosser Lane and Willits intersection, Highway 20 and Blosser Lane. Alexis Kelso, who's our complete streets person in District 1, she sent me kind of some talking points. So I'll just kind of go through those briefly. The project was initiated, I think, mainly due to concerns related to the elementary school and very long history of issues associated with kids needing to get across Highway 20. There was a walk audit in November of 2019 that I believe many of you participated in, that included folks from the school, from the city, from the tribe, the Sherwood Valley Pomo tribe, public health, Bike Walk Mendocino, MCOG staff, and some Caltrans planning staff, traffic safety staff, environmental and maintenance staff. So they were on the ground out there, and they brainstormed several different ideas. And since that time, we have developed a project initiation document, and I will try to share some drawings from that document, which is out for comment, I believe. Let me see if I can get that on my screen. Suspense is killing me. Can you all see this? I'm looking for, can you see my screen?
No, we can't see your screen.
Hmm.
Do you want me to, you should
Oh,
have
wait a
the
second.
ability to
Here
share
we go.
screen.
I think I needed to do one more thing. And
There you go.
there we go. So I'll try not to take too much time, but basically we've developed some concepts for improvements at the intersection, and there are two alternatives. Neither one has secured funding yet, but this is a very good first step that we hope will lead to being able to fund one of these alternatives. Basically, I'm going to scroll down here. One is tightens up the intersection and provides a lot of visual cues and signage and flashing beacons and things like that, that we hope will facilitate safer crossing for pedestrians. You can see it, basically the intersection is very wide now, and this would narrow it up a little bit, shorten the crossing distance, and hopefully create a better environment for pedestrian comfort for people to get across the street, both legs of the, or all four legs of the intersection. The other alternative that we've developed conceptually is a roundabout. Would be considerably more expensive and probably have a long development time, but it is included as an alternative. And depending on, you know, future future funding situation, it may be something that we're able to fund. We really don't know at this time. So that is, you can see cross sections. I can, or I've sent these to the staff at MCOG, and they can distribute these to the board.
Yeah,
how do
they have
achieve-
they've been sent to the board shortly before the meeting. The two diagrams were sent.
Great. So if you have questions on those, I should be able to, I can try to answer anything that comes up now or later. I can contact folks that have more detailed expertise. There's another project that is currently in construction, but it's a district-wide project that's for curb improvements. They had some funding available, and they were able to include some improvements at the intersection. Those improvements include moving the feedback sign to a different, better location, adding a pedestrian activated rapid flashing beacon at the crosswalk, adding yellow flashing beacon in advance of the crosswalk, which will turn on when the pedestrian activates it. New improved intersection lighting and restriping the crosswalks in a higher visibility pattern that uses striping that's more visible. So this is expected to actually get into construction this month, sometime in a few weeks. And that will sort of be interim improvements that will construct basically some of the less expensive, sort of lower hanging fruit that are included in the concepts that have been more developed in that project initiation document that I've shared on my screen. I will unshare that if unless somebody wants me to look at a particular page of that drawing. Those drawings.
I want to let board members know. So the documents that Rex was sharing, those are from the project initiation document, which is out for review currently, and Caltrans is accepting comments on that until November 6th. So if board members have any comments that they would like us to pass along, we can do that.
And that's expected to be finalized December 18th. That's the schedule. And we're looking for funding. Feely pointed out to me this morning that the shop, the complete streets component of the shop, is one of the possible funding sources that we may be able to access potentially in a future cycle.
So my only comment, yeah, my only comments are, as someone who drives on Highway 20 between Fort Bragg and Willits, that the road, as you're driving on Highway 20, the road is a fairly fast road, 45, 55 miles an hour. And you don't feel like you should be slowing down as you approach Willits. I mean, you know you're getting close to Willits, but the road doesn't have indications. There's not major turns. There's not a reason to require you to slow down. And so my concern is if there isn't something that's engineered that sort of compels you to slow down a little bit, I think you're just not going to slow down through that intersection. I mean, I know, even though I know there's a school there, I don't really slow down as I approach Blosser. So for that reason, I feel like the roundabout might be the only thing that really slows people down. But I don't know. Others have other thoughts.
I think that the roundabout would certainly be the more effective solution, but there are pluses and minuses, including cost. And I believe that that all of the improvements will include some sort of further away visual cues for drivers that we hope will get people's attention and hopefully have a traffic calming effect.
Yeah, and so I'll add that when we did the walking audit, which included school representatives, there was a sense that the protected intersection, which was the non-roundabout alternative, would maybe feel more familiar to kids crossing there, because that is sort of the goal, is to improve the crossing safety for the school children. So it would enhance their safety by shortening crossing distances and making drivers more aware, maybe not to the extent that the roundabout would, but that kids would have better visibility. Kids crossing the street at that intersection would have better visibility with the protected intersection than they would with the roundabout. So they'd be able to see oncoming traffic better. So that was one of the benefits that people saw of the protected intersection, but both definitely have their pros and cons.
So just finally,
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
I think
if I'm driving fast, it's coming from the west going east, approaching Willits, from the highway. And so maybe 19 out of 20 times there is no person there wanting to cross, pedestrian wanting to cross the street. Maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's 39 out of 40 times. And so I think if you want to cause someone to slow down as they're coming from the west, there either has to be something that's engineered that forces them to drive slower, like a roundabout would, or there would need to be some sort of alert button that someone could push on the off chance there really is a pedestrian there that would tell someone coming from the west before they get to that intersection that, hey, someone is in that intersection, a pedestrian is in that intersection wanting to cross, or is actually in fact crossing. And I think that light would have to be further west before they would get to that intersection.
Yes. So, Rex can maybe answer this, but I will pass on your comment about, needing something engineered to slow traffic from the west. And then Rex, were you going to?
I was just going to say that the project that's going to be constructed this month does include pedestrian activated beacons. I'm not sure exactly where they're placed, but there are some at the intersection, and I'm pretty sure there are some that are further away as well. But we can reiterate to the designers the need to consider, having it as far upstream or at the optimum distance for drivers to be alerted.
Yes, I believe they were going to be placed 500 feet in advance of the intersection. And those would be connected to the pedestrian activated beacons at the intersection, so they would flash at the same time.
Dan, this is Larry from Willits.
Yes, Larry.
The problem is that when people are in the summertime, when they're driving west to east, coming from Fort Bragg, there's a real gradual drop that drops across Highway 20. And if you're standing there watching the guy with his pickup with his big 18-wheeler trailer is coming down the road at 70 miles an hour, he has no time to stop. If somebody was in that section, I don't care how far the lights are, they just can't do it. And so it's got to be way back to, maybe a couple of them to show them that there's somebody there, and he's got to cut it down. I mean, that's all there is to it. We have a sign that says how fast you're going, and you can stand there and look at that all day long, and it's 65 and 70 miles an hour that they go across that. That's my comment. You got to have something to interact with the people that are coming, and we have a lot of traffic on Highway 20, and everybody's pulling something heavy. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Larry.
John?
Yeah, I'd agree with the comments made, and I taught at Blosser Lane for many years, and the policy is that the kids can't cross Highway 20. They can't go walking there now, and so it'd have to be a radical change, like Dan was saying about the configuration of the whole setup, to really slow people down enough to make it safe for kids to walk. So, but we are looking at the long term. So I guess my feeling would be it'd be better to spend the money if the goal is to get kids to be able to walk safely across that, to spend the money and do it right.
And I don't have the exact distance, but the there will be that rapid flashing beacon at the crosswalk, and then a yellow flashing beacon in advance of the crosswalk. And again, I don't have the exact distance, but I can bring up the concerns with distance to the designers.
Okay, well, thank you very much for giving us an update on the project.
You're welcome. I also just have a little bit of information about the District 1 active transportation plan. So there was a statewide active transportation plan. There have been sort of a bunch of smaller sub area active transportation plans, and so I have this update. We've received and submitted comments on the draft existing conditions report, and the consultants are now finalizing the existing conditions report for that District 1 active transportation plan update. The next phase is gap analysis, and consultants will be using the existing conditions data to perform a level of traffic stress analysis, which looks basically at comfort for bicycles and pedestrians at locations all over the district. There is a public survey that's open, and I think we'll be able to distribute the website for that. It's fairly simple. It's survey.catplan.org. That's CATPLAN.org. But there is also a survey for members of the technical advisory group that has a different website, and we'll be able to distribute all of those to the board. Yeah, there's actually looks like 3 different web addresses for different components of the survey. So that document will be sent out.
All right, so we can, Rex, if you want to provide the link for the surveys, we can send those out to the board members. And
yeah, those are at the bottom of the document that I think I forwarded you from Alexis. So it's the last part of that Word document.
Okay.
You could probably just paste those last 2 bullets.
All right. And then just to let board members know, so it's a District 1 plan, so it includes Humboldt, Dale North, Mendocino, and Lake counties. However, each county has its own technical advisory group. So the Mendocino County Technical Advisory Group has pretty good representation. I believe Jessica Stolato, who was on the call earlier from the Round Valley MAC, is actually on that. I've been participating as well. So we will send out the links for those surveys, and look forward to hearing more about the plan in the future.
Right, and it's just yet another way that we are hoping to be able to capture funding to do some of these improvements in the future. So a way to focus those efforts in the right places.
Right. Caltrans has now 2 funding sources that they did not previously have. So the active transportation grants are now open to Caltrans as an applicant, whereas in the past they were not. That's been true for the last 2 cycles. And then the new Complete Streets component of the shop as well, that I mentioned earlier. So the idea behind that is really sort of where to fund projects, bicycle and pedestrian projects on state highway systems, but I believe there's a particular emphasis on state highways that serve as Main Street and part of the local circulation system.
Yes, thank you. That's my update for today. If there are any questions, I'll do my best to address them. Guess I'll let you guys move on. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Rex.
You're welcome.
Okay, on to the next report.
All right, we've got Mendocino Transit Authority is next on the agenda. I don't believe we've got anyone from MTA in the meeting today.
I just want to report, if anybody doesn't know this, that we do have our executive general manager resigned, and we have promoted James to be our acting general manager. I think maybe he was at our last MCOG meeting in that capacity.
Yes, Jacob King was at the last. He was at the last meeting, and we've been doing some work with him. So hopefully easing that transition into his new position.
Okay, North Coast Rail Authority.
Well, I'll report that we haven't had a meeting, but we do have a meeting scheduled for next Monday. Maybe the next meeting I'll have something to report.
Okay. And then, well, we've got your summary of meetings. Is there anything you want to highlight? No.
No, nothing to highlight.
Okay. Okay, then on to the financial update, budget revenues.
Well, hello, you have my written staff report. There's not a whole lot to report just yet. We've already reported on the end of the fiscal year, so we're looking at fiscal year 2021. And so far, the local transportation fund sales tax revenues are holding up. The first 2 months have come in at 5% above the county auditor's budget estimate, which is what we use for our budget, and he hasn't adjusted that since February. So that's the original budget, and it's holding up so far. We'll see how that goes. I'll know later this month. Around the third week of the month is when we usually get the sales tax payments in. So when that comes in, we will have had the whole first quarter of actuals to look at, and then I can go back and talk to the county auditor and see if we ought to make any changes to the budget estimate. And the state transit assistance, which is from the gasoline and diesel taxes, has not been received yet. So we don't know how that's looking. That's a little more iffy. You know, the estimate was already adjusted downward by the state controller by quite a lot. I did pick up a little buzz at the California Transportation Commission meeting about generally the state of the how the gasoline and diesel taxes and fees are coming in so far, and they are about level with the May revise, the governor's May revision of the budget, which would have been that downward adjustment. So they think those are coming in about level with the May revise. And other than that, I really don't know very much else about what's happening with the revenues. There just hasn't been a lot of activity yet. So I think probably the December meeting would be the very earliest we'd consider an amendment, and possibly not until next February. But MTA, on the other hand, Mendocino Transit Authority, could come to us and ask for a revision of their claim. They can do that at any time in the year. But so far, that's where we are. We're doing pretty well. Any questions?
Okay, thanks, Janet.
Was I on mute? I'm sorry.
No, we heard
No,
you,
we
Jen.
heard you. Thank you.
I just saw my mute button. I must have just clicked it off. Okay. I'm glad you captured all that. All right. And I think I have the next one too.
Yep.
Okay. So I did attend a 2-day online conference on electric vehicle charging infrastructure. And you've got my report on that. There's really way too much to really report. I gave you something of a synopsis, from my point of view, but essentially we had a lot of stakeholders from state regulatory agencies around the country, manufacturers, utilities and network operators. And so there are a lot of people working on this. I'll just make a couple of comments. There's apparently a lot of momentum, a lot of problems being worked through. You can see that a lot of the states have ambitious goals, and there's some multi-state coalitions. And I'd like to just make a caveat that not to hold me to some of these numbers I put in my report. For instance, I picked up there were 8 states in this multi-state coalition. There are 10. I looked it up online. It's probably best to look up online for yourself some of these numbers and make sure those are correct. So that's one point I wanted to make. And the other main point I wanted to say was that in watching this over the years, you know, this movement towards zero emissions began with regulating pollution, right? So that was the impetus in the beginning. It was environmental reasons. And we're kind of getting to the point where there are economic reasons that are driving this movement. And, you know, with the price of solar dropping so far, you know, it's become cheaper and competitive in the energy markets, so that that's really supporting the electrification of transportation. In some cases, it's actually cheaper to have renewables than the traditional fossil fuels. So that's one thing that's driving this. I did notice that some of the major fleet operators we're told at this meeting that they are looking at total cost of ownership. So what that means is they're recognizing now that while there may be some high upfront costs to electrification, there are significant savings in maintenance and fuel costs. So they are looking at what it's going to cost over a number of years to electrify their fleets, and they're comparing that to what their costs are now, and the fact that you know, fuel costs are, you know, can change in the marketplace and are hard to predict. So that was a major thing that I noticed. There's new technology coming out. So there's some interesting things happening. I'll note that the United States is the 3rd largest market for electric vehicle sales after China and Europe. So these things are happening all over the world, and you know, we're paying attention here at the local level because our state, California, of course, does have very ambitious goals, and we are seeing a lot of growth and in the infrastructure. We're seeing, you know, we've had some projects to bring some infrastructure here. So this is continuing to move forward, and it's kind of exciting to watch. So those are the main things I wanted to touch on. There's a lot more to talk about. I did get a 20-page report that the hosts of this conference put out, and I have that. There's just a lot of information there, and we've got all the presentations as well. So a lot more details, things to know about it. But I came away feeling that there's just a lot of momentum, a lot of people working on this, and it's happening. So any questions?
I don't have a question, but Janet, thank you for the report, and also thank you for doing what you can to coordinate with Sonoma Clean Power, because they, yeah, as you know, they've sometimes been able to get grants for charging stations. And what I hear at their meetings is Sonoma County is actually farther behind Mendocino County in installing solar charging stations. And so, or not solar charging, but car charging stations. And so they're actually playing catch up with Mendocino County. So, but anyway, they've had some grants. they also, just for anybody who wants to know, they have basically free car chargers that you could have for your residence or for your business. You'd still have to pay an electrician to install it and have the wiring ready for it. But you basically buy it off their website at half the price. And then once you hook it up to the internet so they can monitor, so you're only charging during non-peak hours, you get the other half rebated. So it's a pretty good deal if you're served by Sonoma Clean Power.
Right, there's some good programs out there, and we're certainly part of that here in Mendocino County.
And one final thing I'll say is I've heard that to install retrofit like an apartment building or a commercial building, tearing up a parking lot and then putting the charging station is maybe 4 or 5 times as expensive as just installing it when you build it. So if anybody's thinking about building, they might want to future-proof their property by putting in the infrastructure from day one. Okay, any other comments or questions on Janet's report? Okay, all right.
I do have one miscellaneous report.
Okay, go ahead.
So at the last meeting, I reported that a virtual public meeting was being planned for the Wallala Downtown project, which was at that point scheduled to happen this month. Because of the change to the new design team and the effort to work out how best to allow opportunity for public engagement when we can't have in-person workshops, there was another delay, which was closely pushing the meeting closer to Thanksgiving. And so the public information officer for Caltrans requested that it be pushed out to January, because having it too close to Thanksgiving or between Thanksgiving and Christmas, there was concern about the ability for people to participate due to other schedule conflicts. So that has actually been pushed out to January 14th. However, in December, there will be a preview of the presentation and other information on the project made available for public viewing, and that'll be on the Caltrans website and on their Caltrans Facebook, as well as sending out notice by email and postcards and flyers in the community. So that date, I think, is firmed up now. So January 14th for those of you that are interested, and we'll share that information with you when it comes along as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that puts us, well, the next thing you have on your agenda was next meeting date, Monday, December 7th. Is there anything we need to discuss about that?
No, we will definitely need a meeting, so do keep that in your calendar.
Okay. Okay, that brings us to MCOG planning staff, draft coordinated public transit human services transportation plan.
Thank you. I wanted to just let you know that we have scheduled the public workshop. We are combining the public workshop with the SS TAC meeting for the public to be able to review and comment on the draft coordinated plan. I believe we've reported previously that MCOG staff is working with the state consultant. The state has a master contract with the University of the Pacific to work with regional agencies to prepare the plan update, which is required every 5 years. So I think we mentioned before that this coordinated plan is an inventory of needs and opportunities for transportation coordination among transit and human services agencies. So basically, any projects that are selected for funding under the 5310 program must be included in a coordinated plan. So this is how we accomplish that. And let's just see briefly, according to FTA, this coordinated plan should be a unified, comprehensive strategy for public transportation service delivery that identifies the transportation needs of 3 priority groups. And those groups are individuals with disabilities, seniors, and individuals with limited incomes. So we're in that process right now, and we wanted to let you know of that workshop on November 16th, and the information is posted on MCOG's website. Bye, honey.
Okay, thanks.
Any questions on that?
And the final plan will come to MCOG for adoption following a review by the SS TAC and public comment.
Okay, all right. If there's no planning miscellaneous, we would then go to MCOG directors.
Oh, I believe there is a
I've got
couple
a
miscellaneous
couple
items.
things real quick.
Okay.
Sorry, Feely. 2 things. The Title VI plan for MCOG, which essentially just says that MCOG is not going to discriminate based on language. It's a requirement of federal government if you disperse federal dollars, which we do. So that is up for renewal. It'll come before you in December. There's going to be pretty much no changes other than probably some census data changes and some minute percentage changes that have no effect on the plan itself. And then part of that plan also is the public participation plan, which was completed back in 2008. And so we are updating that. It is actually in the middle of a 45-day public comment period. It's posted on our website. And that will commence with a public hearing on December 7th, and then adoption following the public hearing, unless there are any major revisions that are warranted. So,
okay.
There you have it.
All right. That was quick. Thanks. Do we have any directors, reports from directors? Okay.
Well,
All
I'll
right.
just say, if I can jump in, Dan,
Go ahead.
that there's been a lot of concern in the Laytonville area about the elk herd, and I know it might not be this MCOG's deal, but I've been trying to get a hold of Caltrans to get better signage or think about how to deal with the expanding elk herd that's crossing the highway in all points throughout the Long Valley. So it's a concern. There's been some accidents lately, and it needs, people need to be aware and cautious when they're going through that area. So I think I've heard that the elk herd even took over the high school football field.
So have you been in contact with our sign folks?
I sent an email off to Eureka office and also to Matt Brady.
That's probably an effective way to go.
Yeah, trying to see what we can do about it. Because right now the signage says at the south end of Laytonville, a couple miles south of town, it says beware of elk or caution elk crossing for the next couple miles. And they've extended way to the north end of Laytonville for Long Valley. So
Well,
when you hit an elk, I guess it's a big deal.
They are big.
Yeah, I can imagine it would be.
Well, good to know the details there, John, because I personally saw an elk once on the north end of town as I was approaching from the north, coming from Humboldt County. And I spoke to someone about it, and they thought for sure I must have been thinking somewhere south of town. So it's good to know that I'm not the only one who thought I saw an elk on the north end of Laytonville. Okay. All right. Any other director reports? Is there any particular news from CalCog that we want to be aware of?
I don't have any news from CalCog.
Okay. All right. Well, then at 2:47, we are adjourned.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, thanks. Take care. Make sure you vote.
Yes.